What if the most powerful man in the world was once chained like an animal? In the heart of a brutal empire built on conquest and cruelty, one nameless slave defied every law of fate, sold into bondage, thrown into the blood-soaked arenas, and beaten by the very boots he would one day command. His rise was not just impossible, it was unthinkable. But this isn't fiction. This is history's greatest reversal. He didn't just escape slavery. He conquered legions, toppled emperors, and seized the throne of Rome itself. And when the dust settled, he didn't seek vengeance. He changed the empire forever. Who was this man? How did a slave come to rule the world's most powerful civilization? And what price did he pay to hold that crown? This is the story they tried to erase, but couldn't. Stay with us. What you're about to hear will change the way you see power forever. He was born beneath an empire that would one day kneel at his feet. But on that first day, there was no prophecy, only chains. In the burning sands of North Africa, where Roman garrisons clash with desert tribes, a nameless child is pulled screaming from his mother's arms. She begs for mercy. The slaver does not stop walking. They call him Afer, not a name, just a label, a direction. The African. He learns silence before he learns speech, learns how to serve, how to disappear, how to watch. And in the golden halls of a Roman governor's villa, as he scrubs floors and carries wine, he listens to strategy, to secrets, to power. Because even in chains, this boy is already studying how to wear a crown. Rome loved blood. It built colosseums for it, made gods of men who spilled it, and laughed as slaves died for sport. And now, the boy, no longer a boy, is thrown into that same pit of sand and screams. Not soldier, not yet, a gladiator, a slave forced to kill to stay alive. Steel clangs, flesh tears, and over time, the boy becomes the beast Rome wanted. But inside, he never forgets who he is, or what they took from him. He earns a name, Septimius, and with every fight, that name spreads like smoke through the empire. Not just for strength, but for something more dangerous. Control. The other slaves listen when he speaks. The crowds cheer when he wins. And the powerful start to watch. Rome thinks it's made him a killer, but what it's really made is a leader. In the darkened dungeons beneath the palace, the boy trains in silence. The old woman watches from the shadows, not guiding, only judging. Each strike he delivers echoes louder, not only through the stone corridors, but through the hearts of those who begin to see something more in him. The emperor, bound by illness and time, starts to realize the heir may not only replace him, but surpass him. When rebellion brews in the outer provinces, the boy is sent, not as a prince, but as bait. Betrayal hangs thick in the air. The guards whisper. The old woman does not intervene. Alone and cornered in enemy territory, the boy must rise not with help, but with resolve forged in pain. This is not the story of a boy becoming a man. It's the story of a soul breaking its chains. Rome bled power like a wounded beast, and every ambitious man could smell it. When Emperor Commodus was murdered, the empire cracked wide open. What followed wasn't succession. It was a feeding frenzy. 3 generals declared themselves emperor. 3 armies marched on Rome. Blood ran through the Senate halls before anyone could shout, "Hail Caesar." But Septimius didn't shout. He moved. From his post in Pannonia, he rallied legions, men who had bled beside him, men who trusted him more than Rome itself. He wasn't the richest, or the most Roman, or even the Senate's choice. But he was fast. He seized northern Italy in days. He declared himself emperor not in Rome, but on the battlefield. The Senate could either bow or be buried. And so the former slave turned soldier began his march on the eternal city. Rome had seen emperors born of patricians, emperors anointed by senators, but never this. In 193 the impossible happened. Septimius Severus, once a slave, once a gladiator, once a general, marched into Rome not as a conqueror, but as its ruler. He entered through the Servian wall under armed guard. But it wasn't fear that gripped the people. It was awe. The Senate, broken and bought, proclaimed him emperor. They had no choice. He held the loyalty of legions, the pulse of the people, and the sword of history. Severus didn't ask for permission. He rewrote the rules. He elevated his African heritage as divine. He reshaped the Praetorian Guard. He built monuments, not to gods, but to his own lineage. This wasn't a man stepping into power. It was a new dynasty taking root. Power may be seized with steel, but it is kept with fear. Emperor Severus ruled not with the Senate's blessing, but with the legion's iron loyalty. And when rivals rose from the east and whispers circled in Rome, he answered with brutal precision. The former slave became the most ruthless emperor of his age. He crushed insurgents in the east, defeated Parthia, and brought back the spoils of Persia. He executed senators who plotted and rewrote the imperial order. He wasn't interested in being accepted by the Roman elite. He erased them, but ruling the world comes at a price. The empire expanded, but so did unrest. Assassins crept into his courts. His own generals feared his wrath, and his sons began to eye the crown. Severus ruled an empire larger than Julius Caesar's, but he ruled it alone. He built an empire with fire and steel, but his greatest gamble was made in blood. Septimius Severus had no illusions of immortality, and so he turned to the only thing that could outlive him, his sons. Caracalla and Geta, brothers by blood, enemies by nature. Severus made them co-emperors in name, but in truth, they despised each other. Where Caracalla was ruthless and hot-tempered, Geta was cunning and patient. Rome held its breath as the brothers circled like wolves. Severus, now aging and ill, tried to bind them through legacy, conquests in Britain, military honors, shared statues. But no symbol could bury a hatred born in the shadows of a throne. He whispered to them with his dying breath, "Be harmonious, enrich the soldiers, and scorn all others." And then he was gone. The father who defied fate left behind a kingdom ready to tear itself apart. He rose from chains to crown. But even emperors can't control what comes after. Only months after Septimius Severus' death, Rome witnessed the unthinkable. Caracalla invited his brother Geta to a peace meeting in their mother's chambers. What followed was not reconciliation, but murder. Guards rushed in on Caracalla's command. Geta was stabbed to death in their mother's arms. The marble floors were slick with imperial blood. Julia Domna screamed, but the empire was silent. Caracalla declared himself sole emperor. He erased Geta's name from all inscriptions, statues, and records, a practice known as damnatio memoriae. The brotherhood was gone. The dynasty began to rot from within. But the legacy of Septimius Severus remained, a slave who rose to become the most powerful man in the world, who defied Rome's rigid order and forced history to bend to his will. And in the ruins of betrayal and ambition, one truth endured. Afen Emperorsti, but legends, especially impossible ones, live forever.